Have you ever opened a financial chart and felt as if it was trying to whisper something to you? Something almost hidden in plain sight. Something that most people ignore until it is far too late. Because right now the bond market is not whispering. It is shouting. And if you look closely enough, you will see an opportunity that very few people will ever recognize in time. An opportunity hidden inside one of the most reliable warning signals in all of economic history. A signal that has predicted almost every major economic downturn for more than a century. And in 2026, this same signal may become the most powerful money-making moment you will ever witness in your lifetime. I'm talking about the yield curve inversion. But not just any inversion. I'm talking about one of the most extreme inversions ever recorded. And once you understand how to use that inversion, not to fear it, but to position yourself around it, you will see why some people become rich during economic chaos while everyone else is caught off guard and unprepared. To understand how to make money from this phenomenon, you need a simple example. Picture this. You open your banking app. Everything seems normal. The numbers look stable. The market appears calm. But then you open another chart, one you barely pay attention to, the yield curve. And suddenly you realize that the entire financial system is flashing a warning that is invisible to most people. It is like checking the weather, seeing a tornado alert, and yet walking outside thinking the sky looks clear. That is exactly how the economy behaves right before major recessions. Calm, optimistic, confident, and totally unaware of the storm forming underneath. But this time, the inversion does not simply warn us about a downturn. This time, it may be the roadmap to get rich if you understand how these signals historically transfer wealth from the unprepared to the prepared. So make sure to stay until the end to understand how to do it and leave a like. Let's start with the basics, because the truth is that the yield curve seems complicated only until you break it down into simple terms. Imagine you lend someone money. For 1 month, you might charge a small amount of interest. For 10 years, you would logically charge more because the future is uncertain. That is the normal curve, upward sloping, predictable, stable. But what happens when the short-term interest rate becomes higher than the long-term rate? What happens when people demand more money to lend for a few months than for 10 full years? That is backwards. And when that happens, the chart flips, the curve inverts, and every time this inversion sticks around, something breaks. Not sometimes, not occasionally, almost every single time. If you look at a long-term chart of inversions, you will see a pattern so clear it is almost frightening. In the late 1920s, the curve inverted before the Great Depression. In 2000, it inverted before the dot-com crash. In 2006, inverted before the housing collapse. In each case, if you plotted the curve on a graph, you would see it dip below zero, stay there quietly, and then months later markets would crash, companies would fail, and entire sectors would be erased. Yet in each of those periods, the stock market looked completely healthy right before the crash. Prices were rising. Optimism was everywhere. That is what makes this such a dangerous signal for most people, and such a profitable one for those who understand it. Now look at the chart today. The inversion that began in 2022 is one of the deepest and longest inversions ever recorded. If you saw the graph, you would see a sharp downward plunge, a long flat line firmly below zero, and a pattern that mirrors, and in some ways exceeds, the severity of both 1929 and 2008. It is the kind of chart that makes economists uneasy, because history shows that the depth of the inversion often predicts the depth of the recession that follows. Shallow inversion, shallow recession. Deep inversion, deep recession. This is not speculation. This is mathematics. This is data. But here is where your opportunity begins. Because if you observe the timing on historical charts, you will notice something strange and incredibly valuable. Markets do not crash immediately after the inversion. In fact, during the inversion itself, the stock market often rises. Investors become overconfident. They believe the warning has failed. They convince themselves that everything is different this time. And that delay creates the perfect setup for those who know what comes next. In 1928, the market rallied for almost 2 years, while the inversion quietly sat there, waiting. In 2006, the market hit new highs, even as the curve deepened. People looked at the data and ignored it because the surface looked calm. Just a little break. I opened a free Telegram community where I teach how to earn money with YouTube and build channels like the one you're watching. If you want to understand how to do it, there's the link below. Back to before. Today, the surface still looks calm, but underneath the math is already breaking. Consumer savings are shrinking. Corporate bankruptcies are climbing. Delinquencies on credit cards and auto loans are rising. Small businesses are paying double the financing costs they paid just a few years ago. And if you visualize each of those numbers on a chart, you would see rising lines pointing toward the same conclusion. The system is under stress. It has not broken yet, but it is bending. And once that bend becomes a snap, the opportunity to position yourself will disappear in an instant. So how do you use this to get rich? You do it by understanding timing, patterns, and market psychology. First, the yield curve inversion gives you the early warning, the signal before the world recognizes the danger. Second, the delay between the inversion and the recession gives you time to accumulate cash, reduce high-risk positions, and identify the you might see assets that historically explode in value during the downturn and the recovery. And third, once the recession actually hits, the market reprices everything. Stocks fall, real estate drops, debt reprices, liquidity dries up, and those who are prepared step into what is essentially the largest discount sale the financial system ever offers. Look back at the charts from 1929, 2008, even 2020. After every major downturn, certain assets surged with extraordinary force. High-quality stocks, undervalued bonds, commodities, and even disruptive technologies that survived the crash. The key is to understand that the period right after the recession, the period that people fear the most, is historically one of the greatest wealth-building windows in existence. But you cannot take advantage of it unless you prepare before the crash, not after. And the yield curve inversion is the tool that tells you when to begin that preparation. Now we need to talk about 2026, because this is where the script changes from warning to opportunity. If you look at the average historical lag between the inversion and the recession, roughly 12 to 24 months, and you overlay today's data on that timeline, you can see that the pressure is aligning almost perfectly with a window that points toward 2025 or 2026 as the breaking point. But here is the twist. This upcoming inversion is happening while the world is drowning in more debt than any previous generation has ever seen. Governments are running historic deficits. Corporations have refinanced at higher rates. Households are stretched thin. And unlike other periods, this time there is no stimulus cushion left to absorb the shock. If you could see a chart of global debt today, it would look like a mountain, rising vertically, towering over anything from the past. And when interest rates stay high while that debt pile grows, something eventually breaks. It is not a matter of if, it is a matter of when. And the yield curve is already telling us that the timeline is accelerating. So how do you turn this into a winning strategy? You do it by preparing for 3 phases. Phase 1 is the inversion window, the quiet before the storm, the period you are living in right now. This is where the wealthy accumulate cash, reduce bad debt, and watch the charts carefully. Phase 2 is the break, the moment the illusion collapses. It could be triggered by a credit crunch, a liquidity freeze, a major default, or even a geopolitical shock. When that moment comes, asset prices will fall sharply, and this is where most people panic. But this is also where the greatest opportunities appear. And phase 3 is the recovery, the period when those who are ready start accumulating undervalued assets at historically low prices. This is the phase where people get rich while the world is still afraid. If you look at the post-crash charts from 2009, 1933, 1982, or 2020, you will see powerful upward moves that change the financial lives of anyone who positioned themselves correctly. And the inversion is the compass that guides you to that moment before it happens. What makes 2026 unique is the combination of extreme inversion, record debt levels, inflated asset prices, global instability, and a Federal Reserve balancing on the edge between inflation and recession. It is a setup unlike anything from the past, and that is precisely why the opportunity is so large. One look at the long-term chart and you will see that cycles of this magnitude reshape everything: markets, policy, wealth distribution, and even entire economic systems. This time, If you understand the signal, if you understand the timeline, and if you understand how to position yourself, the coming inversion may not just be a warning, it may be the chance to build wealth during one of the most turbulent transitions the global economy has ever seen. And now you know what most people still refuse to look at. This is not fear, this is preparation. This is strategy. And this is how you use the 2026 yield curve inversion to get rich. Not by guessing, not by gambling, but by understanding the one signal that has outperformed experts, models, and predictions for over a century. Prepare early, move carefully, and when the window opens, take action. Because the yield curve never lies. Smash that subscribe and like button. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And I also want to remind you that if you want to build a YouTube channel like the one you're watching now and make money from it, I opened a free Telegram community with the link below. See you there or in the next video. Just a reminder, I'm not a financial advisor. This video is for educational purposes only, and any results depend on your own decisions and actions.